We go again. And this is episode number 6. We're getting through them now. We're getting into it, and I'm really enjoying them. I really am, and I've had some positive feedback as well, which is nice. Thank you very much. Those who are tuning in, and this is on the back of. It's probably coming by a wee bit of, no pressure, but the plan is to put them out at least once a week. It's important apparently to put them out on a certain day so that people know when they're coming, that kind of stuff, which is great. I agree with that completely. I did one yesterday, which went out this morning. This is Tuesday, and so this one will be going out on the Friday. And as always, I'm reporting where I am. I'm talking about where I am, and depending on what's coming up for me and the stuff that I'm going to want to be sharing and going to want to be talking about, it depends on where I am and what's coming through me. Obviously, that's the way that it works, and off the back of the last podcast, number 5. But I was really talking about things that I don't like, and there's loads and loads of things that I don't like. There's loads and loads of people, no people that I don't like, but the way they do things and what their work does to people, and what they get out of it, and how they, I suppose, earn a living in terms of the benefits or not that they bring, even perceived or not. So there's things within the circus that I really don't like. And I suppose this is just an extension of it, and it's a wee bit of a tricky one because there is so much within this subject that I absolutely love, but at the same time there's bits within it that really I don't agree with on many different levels. And I suppose this podcast, again, I'm just sharing my truth, I'm sharing my experience. I think it's important as well, where I'm just now, just to get some of this stuff out in the open before we move forward, so that people will know, at least they'll be able to go back and check in something like this when it's recorded. They can see what my stance is and why I'm coming, and it will save me having to repeat myself and explain myself as we go forward, because there's so many things I want to talk about. That's the thing, I'm now starting to get into. I'm really enjoying it. So there's so many different subjects, even just my own story, the things that I've been through and the work that I'm doing, and how it's helping people, and what we're doing in terms of the vortex and the mission and the plans and the expansion and what's happening, day-to-day stuff. That's all great, and obviously hugely relevant. And there's also the other stuff as well. The plan within this Godcast is to bring other people in, people who I consider to be, forces for good, forces who are here able to help in terms of solutions, in alignment with this work. I've got some really, really cool, interesting people who I would consider to be a lot of my pals, that I'm going to get on, and it'll be probably me interviewing very, very loosely, and probably just going over, probably my story with them, and how we know each other and their work and how it impacts, and my experiences of who they are. And a big part of this is to, help other light workers, people who are in it for the greatest good, to get out there. And at the same time, obviously there's other side to that coin, those who are not in it for the greatest good. On occasion, as I said for the last podcast, I will absolutely be calling them it, which I believe, that's the work within this channel. That's what it's all about. It's offering a different way of doing things, and in my belief, almost always, a better way of doing things, and an easier way of doing things, and a way of doing things the way it's probably meant to be, in my experience, just my take on it. Obviously you're going to disagree with that, some of you, and I get that, and that's okay. And probably the subject of this is again, I can already feel them lining up. The subject I'm going to talk about is cold exposure for this one, and my vast experience in it since I came across it properly. My first direct experience of it, using it as as a tool for cold, I suppose this time around, it came into my life at different stages. I suppose the first time where I really used cold exposure was when we played football. It was over in Northern Ireland, in the Milk Cup. I used to go there with Motherwell. We were under, what would that be, 14, 15 maybe. And they used to take us into this kind of pool, this outdoor pool in the morning time for our legs. And you just walk about with your shorts on, up to your thighs, in this freezing cold, salty water. Bobby Jenks was the guy. He was the chief scout at Motherwell, who ran the kind of youth academy, and he was with Brian Clough down at Nottingham Forest. Because he tried to take me to Nottingham Forest when I was young, probably around about that 15, 16, and he came to Motherwell. So he took us into the sea every morning, and that was my first kind of real, the benefits of it, absolutely, but the process of actually using it and having to step in as a wee skinny 15-year-old guy, and it's the last thing you want to be doing, walking about in this cold water. Really interesting, thinking back to it without, really realising what you were doing or the real benefit, just then because you were told to get in and that was it. Was there any really marked, life-changing relief or experiences or gains in, kind of physical improvements, that kind of stuff? Not that I remember. And it wasn't until much later on, as I've spoken before, Hickson Gracie was the first person who I really saw using the breathwork and cold exposure together in the documentary Choke. Hickson's a great, one of my heroes, the Last Samurai. One of the when you talk about peaceful warriors and who that man is and what he's all about in terms of spiritual being and his own journey and his own story, not just the jiu-jitsu and the fighting, but who he is as a spiritual being. And obviously the breathwork and the yoga and the meditation and the cold exposure, watching him in Japan, this bronze Adonis, 5'9", just an absolute god. In these cold alpine, snow melt running streams with kind of snow at the side, and watching his brothers and his training partners, watching him, getting into it, and just how, obviously, the benefits he was getting was a part of what he was doing. That was the first time I really became aware of it. And then, strangely enough, thanks to jiu-jitsu, I found it again, where I almost killed myself, or was almost killed. I had 3 kind of really painful injuries, some more serious than the next. I broke my toe, my wee pinky toe was going the wrong way. I just got caught in the mat one night, which is fine. Tore my knee in half, tore my meniscus in half. I carried that injury for about 4 or 5 years before I got it fixed, so this was right at the beginning, and which was painful enough. My knee would lock into place, but the sorest one was my neck. I thought I'd fractured my neck, and that was just the pain, but the kind of nerve damage pain was just incredible, and it was then where, I suppose cold exposure, I had big enough reasons and a big enough why to start to look into it properly and bring it into my life. So after lying on the floor in tears for at least a couple of days, I heard Wim Hof's name 3 times in 3 days. His name just appeared out of the blue, and straight away he was talking about exactly what I needed in terms of pain relief, and which was what attracted me to it. And then watching the breathwork already, thinking about Hickson and how similar it was. So I was into it straight from the beginning. It changed my life, the very first submersion. Watching one of Wim's videos back in 2016 was when I came across it. And the first thing I did, and at the time I had a wee bit of a chest infection going on, which was the norm for me. It really was. Up to that point, I was sick a lot of my life and my journey, as I've heard on here before, no doubt, and it's something I'll talk about continuously. Again, speaking from my experience, but I was no well a lot, and at that time, I was no well. I was carrying something, kind of probably virally, a wee bit of chest infection-y. Not quite sure how far it was going to go. But the pain that was in was my biggest concern. The chest thing was that wasn't even really an issue at the time. Thinking back about it now, it was more the pain I was in, and really the worries about my neck. What was I going to do with my neck? And no taking pain pills, which I hadn't done for a long time, even like over the counter stuff. I haven't been to a doctor since 1996, so even things you could buy, like prescription, non-prescription stuff like the cocodamols and the kind of heavier painkillers, I never really ever took them much, unless it was really bad, on certain times when I was doing long distance, I was doing full distance Ironman training, ultra distance running, karate training at certain points, which is all stuff that I'd done at different levels. I was training between 25 and 30 hours a week, up to this point when I found jiu-jitsu, and kind of was needing a break for the bike and the swimming and the running and the, all that kind of stuff. I was needing something a wee bit different. I was bored and I'd done everything I really wanted to do. I'd done 3 full distance Ironman by that point. I'd ran the ultra distance marathon called The Wall, between Carlisle to Newcastle. That was an interesting day. 100 kilometres, left here at 4 in the morning, and then drove back up the next night, get back into Newcastle, 18 hours and 1 minute on my feet, and then drove back up to Newcastle. When we finished, oh my God, it was that's kind of stuff I was doing, So when I found the cold exposure, it was right at the time when I was basically needing something different. And my body basically, it was almost like it gave in on me. I'm still on the Manuka honey, so excuse me. My throat is still a wee bit, it's getting better, but it's still closing over a wee bit. Awesome. I saw that time and where I was at that time and what I was looking for, which I didn't really know. I was just bored. I'd had this enlightened experience, the numbing effects of daily awareness and realities, and I suppose looking for something else. And previous to that, I'd had a really kind of profound spiritual encounter, I suppose you would call it, where a man basically channeled archangels, that's the other way to say it. He channeled archangels, and it was a workshop in here, and he channeled some information, which me being the cynic, it was like, aye, okay, but the information that came through, it related to nature and the stuff that showed up at that time. Looking back, it was absolutely perfect in terms of, you know, how I came across Wim Hof, what the Wim Hof method did for me, what the cold exposure practice did for me at that time when I was really looking for something. It changed my life, absolutely it did. It was such a positive force within my life, and it was almost like, not the final piece in the puzzle, but it was a significant part of it. Everything else I'd been working on, you know, when I came across, you know, the breath work as a starter for 10, but then, you know, when I really started to use the cold and the benefits that are so well documented now, at the time I just felt great, that was it. I didn't need to know the science or what it was doing, and then, you know, the benefits of it, how I brought it into my life, and that whole practice very quickly. And the first day I started it, I seemed to just stop all my other training, and I really kind of, as always with me, like an absolute fiend, I get into it, I just get straight into it. I signed up for the Wim Hof method. Is it the fundamental program that they call it, which is I think it's a 10-week program. Very basic, you know, just really kind of black and white. They were obviously just starting out, or when we were just at the first rung on the ladder. Their plan was to take it to the world, and it was basically a series of like different week long, something you would do every single day for a week, and then they'd all had a different heading, like inspiration or vitality, or there were different headings, and then every week would be a variation of the breath work and a wee bit more about the science or Wim's story, some yoga added into it, which was really extreme. I know a lot of people, myself included, to get injured doing that. Really advanced, the kind of one-arm bandits and just really advanced kind of yoga, which Wim is. And it was a great journey. I loved it right from the very beginning. I was into it, and there was myself and a really, really good friend of mine at the time, Mark Hume, from down in the Borders, who Mark actually did the sign at the Vortex. He carved the sign for me, and me and Mark became like brothers instantly. We really did, and the Wim Hof journey was part of that. So I started the program. I believe Mark started it 1 week later. I gave this video that I saw online to 3 or 4 people, and Mark was the only person that really hooked into it. And he was in this work in terms of being a holistic practitioner as well as a tree surgeon stuff. A great human being, just a force for good. He really is, Mark, and I hope he's well. I've not spoken to him for a long time, and I really do hope that you're well, brother. We had what a run we had with the cold exposure and with Wim Hof. It was fantastic, the experiences we had together. And it started right from the very beginning. I think Mark started the week. It started the week after me. So again, timing and, you know, going through this process of doing this breath work and these different, I suppose, challenges every single week. You know, after 10 weeks, the timing of it you couldn't make up. But Wim was coming to Edinburgh, and he was doing a workshop in a big yoga studio up in Edinburgh on a Sunday morning. And the timing, the night that I finished the programme, the night before he came, so it was a Saturday, and the workshop was on the Sunday. And it was 10 o'clock on a Sunday morning, and I bought a ticket at the beginning. The timing again, just, oh my God, can you make this up? I want to go and meet this man and see, you know, what he's all about. I wanted to go and see him face to face and see what I was dealing with, you know, because I'd watched the videos, obviously online, I'd heard about his story. I wanted to go and see him in the flesh, and I got the opportunity, and he came to Edinburgh, and we went up there. Mark missed his opportunity to get a ticket and ended up as a helper, so he got in, and I was driving up there first thing in the morning. Say it started at 10, I'd be heading up there at 7, you know, and Mark was already there. There was pictures of him outside with Wim and all that, women's splits and all that kind of stuff, you know. And you felt as if you're going to see something really powerful and somebody really significant. It was so fresh, and it was in alignment with a lot of the stuff that I was already believing and doing and speaking about. That's why I think I was drawn to him. And obviously to the method as well, the benefits I was having myself would be using his method every single day. And the method itself, you know, when you really look at it, he was very, very clever, because he took stuff that had always been there and just put them together. You know, the breath work, the cold exposure, and, you know, it's the power of intention he's talking about, your mindset. He took the 3 of those and created a new thing, you know, so fair play to him. And when I went up to meet him that morning, I got there probably a couple of hours early. People are milling about, nobody's there in terms of who's going to the actual workshop. So I just signed myself in as a helper. I went in and into the main hall, massive big yoga studio, and I'm sitting on the guitar. playing his guitar. So I just sat maybe across from him, maybe, I don't know, 5-10 paces away, and I just sat in meditation. I just tuned into what he was singing and watched him, and it was all cool. There was 2 or 3 people milling about, and very quickly he tuned into me and he asked me straight away, like, what's your story, man? That was the exact words, what's your story, man? And I asked him, like, how far back do you want to go? What do you want to know? And fair play to him, he said, give me it all, tell me it all. So he basically sat up and he stopped playing his guitar. Again, respect for that. He doesn't know me from Adam. I'm just there to see who he is and see what it is that that this method is. See the man behind it all. I was going to kind of not just like hear him and but just to watch him, and see if it was legit, I suppose, in many ways. And it really felt it. It really did. I told him a whole story. After about 10-15 minutes he got up, and he was in tears, I was in tears. There's a great picture of the two of us hugging, who Mark took, Mark Scott. I don't know if I've still got that picture, it was online a while back. And it just captured a really beautiful moment. With a great workshop, there was probably 100 people there. I think it was £100 a head. And it was the first time I ever saw a Wim Hof Method instructor t-shirt. There'd been a group, so this was like the springtime, there'd been a group in the December time, and they were just back, and I think a couple of the guys, there was 2 Scottish instructors basically before me. So a couple of guys got their Wim Hof Method, had their t-shirts, were presented with them at the side, just kind of, which I thought I always thought at the time they should have made more of that, because I knew how powerful it was, and obviously I was getting on about it and I was getting into it, and this was a significant, these were the only 2 Wim Hof Method like Scottish instructors as far as I knew. And it was just interesting watching how they did it, and seeing one behind the scenes, and how that day, how that workshop went together. 100 people, a lot of people. It was fantastic, a great experience. But I decided that day I was going to become an instructor. The timing of it was perfect, and I was needing something new. So off I went, and for the next week I was antsing my pants, because online, there's 3 different levels to it. You get the initial fundamentals program, the 10-week program. You need to go through that, and then at the time you basically had to go to the advanced course over at Wim's house in Stroll, which was great. I mean, that was let's go. And then once you went through that weekend, I wasn't sure of the selection process, but that basically pre-qualified you. And if you did that weekend, then you could then go to Poland and spend a week with Wim up the mountain, Mount Snežka, in the snow, in the alpine kind of pools and all that kind of stuff that was now starting to, well, we knew about it, but nobody else really does. So it was famous to us, in terms of the White Mountain and some of the pictures and the icicles and all that kind of stuff. So that was exciting, and it was something that I absolutely was needing, and it came at the perfect time for me. Signed up for the next level, the advanced workshop. There was a bit of kind of touring and froing. My first real experience of Inner Fire, the office. And it wasn't great to begin with. I had booked, there was 2 different dates, and the date that I had booked got mixed up with the original date, and flights had been booked, and they were just like so offhandish at the time with me. I remember thinking it was a wee bit strange, especially Wim's message and having met Wim, and I was now committing to going like working with them, not for them but with them. One of the things I said to Wim at the beginning was, I want to help you. I'm here to help. Very first time that I spoke, I said, I'm not here for you. I don't need a guru. I'm here. I work with God, or for God. But I'm here for the method. The method's here to help people. Absolutely, and that was made very clear from the beginning. So there was things right for the off that didn't really sit great. In terms of when you look back now and you think, all right, his son was there at the time, Enam, who for anybody that doesn't know owns the Wim Hof Method. I think that's still the case. I think he owns the whole thing. There's a journalist online, Scott Kearney, who I absolutely do not endorse or promote anyway, but he's the man who basically seems to be talking about, he was in Wim's Inner Circle, was an instructor 2013 maybe, was in the Vice documentary, he was actually in it, went to debunk Wim and tells the whole story of all the good stuff, all the rainbows and unicorns, and then latterly, over the last year or so I suppose, with good cause, he's documenting that people are actually dying with the Wim Hof Method, so he's been in there from the beginning, and he talks a lot about what's going on just now with the court cases and the legal stuff, but also the history of the Wim Hof Method. He was kind of personal friends with him, a lot of kind of one-on-one conversation. A lot of them are recorded, which no for me. But he's now turned on Wim, and he's revealing loads of different things that went on behind the scenes that I didn't know a lot of this, but I just knew that something wasn't right, even from the beginning. So I went to Stroh for the weekend, the advanced workshop seminar that allows you to qualify for the next bit, and it was an eye opener. It was a bit of a shocker for me and Mark Hume. It was probably 70 or 80, I would imagine, maybe slightly less than that on the course. And Wim's obviously there, and you're at his house, you're in his home, and it was 2 days of science, which we weren't expecting, I don't think. It was right in third year university level science and explaining what the method does and how it works and what was going to be required to become an instructor, in terms of teaching at a scientific level. So you really had to get your shit together, which gave me the fear for the beginning. I used to go to school to see my wife and to play football. That was my 2 reasons for going to school, so to now, all these benefits that I was getting for myself, and also I was teaching at the time as well. I've been teaching for a long time in different ways, but this modality of cold exposure and breathwork, I was already teaching it and passing it on to people and watching what happens to people when they switch off their stress and all that kind of stuff. So to think you then had to go and jump through these hoops to become an instructor, that was a challenge. Also, the level of information, scientific information, was a huge challenge. And the environment itself. I was probably just too late to get a seat at Wim's Inner Circle, a seat at the table. That was very clear for the beginning. For people that had a seat at the table, there was one dude who ran Wim's Academy, and certainly the science side of it. His teacher, old Casper van der Milden, I think his name is. The book out, was it Mindlift? Interesting guy. And right for the very first day when he came over, sitting at lunch. And he said to me, so you are Vortex Centre, and he was really smug the way he said it, and I thought I was just sitting having lunch, and I'm thinking, I didn't even know who he was. I don't really follow anybody online, never have done, and just the way he said it, you're Vortex Centre. It was years and years later that I realised that he thought I was saying that I was the centre of the vortex, which I love. Instead of the vortex, it's a centre for wellbeing. That's what the name on Instagram was, which he took it as me calling myself the Vortex Centre, which was brilliant. He was rang right for the very beginning, and really judged me for the beginning, and kind of I made it awkward in certain ways. He was a teacher, he was a man, he was going to have a huge part to say in terms of if he became an instructor or not. And right for that very first weekend, the fear for us, I suppose, the thickos, the people that were not scientifically educated, the thought of presenting science at this level and, understanding how it went together, that was a big concern for a lot of people. A lot of fear within that group, which the high Hegians, absolutely, I wouldn't say they abused it, but they used it. They definitely did. They had something that you wanted right for the beginning. This kind of run about Wim, and obviously the way his star was rising up. And right for the very beginning, I just didn't feel like I fitted in. I don't know whether I felt like as I was a threat to them or a threat to their position with Wim. Me and Wim were fine. It was just straight up with Wim. And watching him in his own home that weekend, it was very interesting. You get to see behind the veil a wee bit. And a couple of things that happened during that weekend, and I'm obviously, this isn't a fucking kiss and tell. This isn't this isn't what this is. I'm talking about my experiences with Wim Hof and the things that I saw in the Wim Hof method and the good stuff, and I'm going to talk about the bad stuff as well. So it's going to be a really balanced view of the whole thing. Now, probably in the past I couldn't have given that. I was probably angry or disappointed, and maybe a wee bit. I'm not vengeful, but just disappointed, I suppose, would be the best way to describe Wim Hof to me and what he did and who I saw him to be, which is fine. That's many, many lessons. There's nothing in vain. I have learned so much from my time with him. And it goes right back to that first meeting in Edinburgh, and then the second time when I went over to his house, and I actually took him out a bottle of whiskey, which I didn't drink at the time. It was an interesting thing, but it was a bottle. I used to love whiskey, not like guzzling it like an alcoholic, but a nice whiskey, like a nice, some of the finer whiskies. And my grandfather came from Islay, so it's in there somewhere. But I took him over a bottle of 16-year-old Lagavulin. I took him, which was 50 quid. Bought it in duty free, and I took it over to him, and I gifted it to him. And again, I would see Wim coming, and you would watch him in these situations, and I very quickly identified that there was like Wim Hof, the human being, and then Wim Hof, this kind of dancing bear. That when he walked through the doors, bang, the lights come on, and it just became the Iceman, and you never really got to see the real him, which I understand. Even then, the demands on him and how quickly he was, becoming something. So I get all that, I understand that. But I gave him this bottle of whiskey and he was offended by it. He was really offended by it. It was like almost, it wasn't repulsed, but it was like why are you giving me this? And I thought it was a bit strange at the time. His girl Erin, she loved it, she took it, we'll have it, no problem at all. Left the gift there, but I felt as if there was something a wee bit, it was unusual, it was uneasy how much this gift, and what I says to him was like, I'm a Scotsman who's gifting you a really bottle of a nice Scotch, so keep it in your house. You don't need to drink it, if anybody comes over, you can basically offer it as a toast, or one wee tiny 16-year-old Lagavulin with just the right amount of ice in it, or a wee bit of water. some of the finer things in life, you don't need to drink 3, 4 or 5 of them, but one of them, one half, and it's been a long time. It's been years and years and years since I've done that. But at the time, it's that old living water with the whiskey, how pure it is, and the right stuff. There can be a charge off it, So that was my intention, and it didn't get down too well. And I always left, and I felt that's a wee bit strange, how he reacted there. Later on, I was on a one-man retreat. I went down to Tenerife. Just to get away for a week into this yogic centre, which was incredible. And the night I was there, I arrived, there was a lady leaving from Holland. The place was empty except one. There was a Dutch yoga seminar that just kind of started off at the same time as me. The entire place was just me and them in it. And this lady had been there on her own. She was leaving. And I think they prepared food for me because I was the only person in the place when I arrived. And she was having something before she left. So we ended up getting chatting for half an hour. She was just getting ready to leave the place and I just arrived. And she was from Holland. She was talking about what I did and blah, blah, blah. And I was talking about Wim and the Wim Hof method, and very casually, one, she didn't like him, but she mentioned alcohol, the problem they had with alcohol in terms of being an alcoholic, and how in Holland that was that was just common knowledge, which I'd never heard before. I didn't know that, but straight away I thought back to, holy shit, I'm just trying to get him a bottle of whiskey. Like, what are you doing? I mean, it just felt terrible, if the man does have alcohol issues, then absolutely, what are you doing? So I made a note to kind of apologise to him when I saw him next. That's kind of what I was thinking about. And then basically from the Easter time, kind of March, April time, and then you leave the Wim Hof Method Academy, you got all your science videos and the documentation and the books, and you need to go away and learn. And for me, it was like ABC. What is the nervous system? How does it work? What is the immune system? And then learn about the experiments that they've done in Wim and in Wim's story, because a big part is teaching Wim's story. All of the 26 or 27 world records, which they told me at the time, many times I heard that, 26, 27 world records. And everything from, hanging off a hot air balloon to running marathons in the desert to swimming under ice, and you're just looking at this guy going, holy, what a life, what a... And then his story as well, his wife suiciding, and his demise after that. I mean, how do you deal with that? You lose your wife, the mother to your children, and obviously where she was, and how do you then raise the kids going through that? And I always believed that when the mum wasn't there, he basically went in and basically raised the children. Learned through Scott Kearney and his direct experience that's not what happened. And in fact, a lot of the stuff, so much of it in fact was lies, relating to the world records in particular. But also loads of other stuff looking back, how they exaggerate the truth and basically claim stuff that isn't actually factual. The records is a great thing though. The Guinness World Records, I think World Records, it's a Guinness Book of Records. Growing up, every Christmas you get the Guinness Book of Records added anyway, or every couple of years. And you would go through and you'd see all these different records. And there was a programme on it, the television at the time, where basically the Guinness officials would show up and somebody would have, so it need to be officiated and obviously, scientifically proven to qualify as a world record. And here's Wim with 26 or 27 of them. And I found out maybe about a year ago that I think he's maybe got 2 that are legit, that are actual world records, so they say. But the rest of them he just kind of claimed. And when people lie like that, that's a blatant lie, then you start to see through things, and that's really been the story of me with Wim Hof. For the first time I met him, and I saw him online, then I met him in Edinburgh and really believed in him, then I saw him in his house, and it was like, and then the next time I saw him was over in Poland, where after studying for the next 6, 7, 8 months every day, learning the science, learning how it all goes together, to go over there and to be so excited in the most fantastic group. Every single person who'd been on the weekend, you had to go to that weekend to qualify for the thing. So there was only really one person, a Frenchman, who basically came in, who was external to the group. And I wish he hadn't been there. He was an absolute roaster. The rest of the group were awesome. Certainly people you don't obviously click with, but there was something about him. It was John Francois. It was a really big deal in France, big, handsome, muscly, modelly type dude who had books released after we trained, and just pure ego and noise and loud, and I shouldn't really have been there, I don't think, looking back, the energy of the group and what he brought to it. Interesting character. Everybody else was just awesome. But Wim was on his world tour at the time, and I suppose that year I'd been watching Wim and watching his world tour was really America. And obviously we're watching him going, we're on the coattails of this is going to be great for us, obviously, as well. And watching Wim, in America, and this was like the second time he'd been on Rogan, and Elon Musk, and I was just watching him, and there was certain things that I didn't like. There were certain things that he was doing when he was on talking about things, but it's more images than when I was watching him. And it was Mark Hume who basically, one of his pals who called Wim out and basically said, what's the story with Wim Hof throwing up the sixes? And I'm like, okay, I knew what throwing up the sixes was. I had never seen Wim do it. And throwing up the sixes, now it's basically a hand signal. I'm not going to point at the camera because it's fairly horrible. But that can mean okay. When you put your fingers up, it's like okay. But there's also people who believe that it's 3 sixes. Again, you can argue either way. I don't know. I really don't know. But the picture that was shown to me at the time, and there was another probably 7 or 8 pictures where Wim was in this picture with certain people. Djokovic was one, Rogan was another one, and he's got these sixes up all the time. And the guy basically asked the question to Mark, what's the story with Wim chucking the sixes? And when I looked at the picture, I saw a completely different picture. I saw the intention in him that I had never seen before. And I really think that happened between Easter time, when I met him in his house, and then during that period up over in America. I don't know what happened. I really don't understand what happened to him, because he spoke in a way before it was so, it wasn't like a call to arms, but it was so much in terms of positivity and how we fix this mess, how we fix the horrors of the world, and in terms of, he was talking about the pharmaceuticals and the school system, and when he spoke, it was like, let's go, man, let's fucking go, let's do this, the system needs to go, it's broken, so many people are sick. His story, my desire to help, it was like a perfect storm. He used to talk about tribe all the time, being part of a tribe, which I'd fantasised about, but knew that's the way it had to go, back into nature and back into, the elements, and living off the land, and in communities, and altruism, all that kind of stuff. So very much on the same page. And those pictures, and watching him and seeing where he was, and I just started to, everything changed for me. It kind of did, really, really quickly. And then by the time we went over to Poland in November, the 30th of November, I think it was, went over for a week's training. He was still in America, and he was coming back from his world tour. And it was the second or the third day that we were there, he was coming back in. And a big part of the whole Wim Hof Method Academy is a science presentation. It's standing up and doing your science presentation. And there's 27 on that course. And the question for us to the teachers, Casper, what do we do here? Do we tell a story, or do we do a scientific Wim Hof Method presentation? Because I'm thinking 27 presentations, standing up, the Wim Hof Method, what it does for your immune system, telling Wim's story. So at that level, we kind of got to assume, there's obviously need to know the knowledge, but my feeling was they were probably more looking to get to know you and to see who you were as an ambassador for the brand. That's what it felt like, whether you were a good fit. And in fact, Mark Hume asked, Casper boy, what do we do here? And Casper says, just tell your story, just come and tell your story. So we did. The first night we did the presentations, it was probably half a dozen. It would take maybe half an hour. And then we missed it maybe the second night, and it was a big deal, so if you'd done your presentation, they'd videoed it, and they were going to be judged on that would go towards your certification, obviously, whether you became an instructor or not. So I'm sitting waiting to do this presentation, and it was actually the day that Wim came back. It was probably the Wednesday, so it was maybe 3 days in, and I swear to God, I could feel him coming up the mountain. There was a lad from Ireland doing a presentation, it was a lovely big Scot, and he was basically did this impeccable, just well rehearsed, like the way it was meant to be, balanced between the science and the benefits of it and how it went together and who won. It was just perfect, and then here's the rest of us, and these guys had already been, that just went up and basically told their story. I remember Alan Tong going up, and then Mark Hume going up, and Mark was showing pictures of racing greyhounds, which was his life, and like who he was as a human being, and it was beautiful. It was, and that was on the back of Casper saying, just tell your story. So this second night we're doing the presentations, and I could feel him coming up. I swear to God, I could feel him coming up the mountain, and he basically came up and he walked through the doors, and you could just see because he's like a whirlwind. Wim Hof, his energy is like a whirlwind. It really is. He's a powerful being, and he walked through the doors, and Big Scott, I could just see him. I was like, holy fuck! And Wim comes in and just sits right in the middle of the circle and says, "Listen, well, how you doing?" Acknowledged them, but keep going. So Scott finished up, and I was like, "Right, who's next?" And I'd say to Jill before I went, I'm going to present to Wim. I want to present to him. I'm there to help him, to do this with him. I want to present to him. So I basically offered my services. I think there wasn't many people willing to stand up and talk, and I just basically took the floor and said, right, okay, here's what it is. And I spoke for about 45 minutes, I think. I just told my story. I told them why I was there, my reasons for being there, my intentions to help, why I believed I could help them. It was all good stuff. What I'd done in my own life in terms of how I'd fallen, what I'd done to my family, and then how if I'd had these tools and techniques 25 years ago, the time it would have saved me in terms of learning how to manage my nervous system and breathing properly and sleeping and pain relief. My life up to that point had been great, with all of that. So it was a real let's go. I just told my story and told them who I was. And I finished the story, and Wim had an incredible presence of looking into you. He would look through your soul, he would stare into you, and he wouldn't blink. He would just sit and stare through you. Really, not overpowering if you know what you're dealing with, but it's imposing. And he never blinked for about 45 minutes. And when I finished, there was tears, there was people cuddling, and you could have heard a pin drop. And Wim basically stopped, and we all kind of looked to him to see what his take on it was. And he says, James, I have no idea what you just said, but it sounded good, or it sounded, and it basically half made a fool of me, which Mark Hume, right away, he's like, what was that? As soon as we left, what was that about? And my heart sank. I just sat and poured my heart out to him and told me my intention to help and dedicate to this work and this way of helping people and this method, and let's go, do it together. And he basically made a fool of me, or tried to make a fool of me. And a lot of people noticed it. It was very, very interesting. And that was his first night there. That was him back for his world tour and all this other stuff, chucking the sixes and watching him. And he'd started wearing these reindeer horns as well. They appeared, which was interesting. That's the first time I saw them during that week. And that night, he was in the bar with the boys. He was having the pints with the boys. Wee Alan Tong was absolutely wrecked. I disappeared. I was gone. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Wim holding up the bar with the boys on the lagers, on the beers, and I'm just going, I'm thinking back to the whiskey I gave him, and how it repulsed him. And then now, and I'm like, all right, this all now starts to make sense. And I never really seen him much that week, the next 3 or 4 nights. I really didn't. The week itself was fantastic. There was so many lessons in it. Because I cut short my presentation, Casper basically said, I'll catch your science presentation, so forget about that. What a story, incredible. He was in tears, everybody's like, right, okay, we need to go, we need to call it. So the night was over, I still had to do my science presentation. So every night for the rest of the week, it was like, Casper's going to see you, Casper's going to do your science presentation. So the closer it got to the end of the week, and what a week it was. I mean, it was a great week. The acclimatisation day up in the mountain, 4 or 5 hours, where it was brutal, the coldest I have ever been. But they take you up to the pool at night time, sitting in that pool for like 10 minutes. Freezing, alpine, running snowmelt, -4, -5, which is the coldest way. When that water's running over the top of you, pitch black at night time after your dinner, and then walking down the hill, just like your life feels as if it's literally on the line. You're so cold, brilliant. And then the relationships and the people and the conversations, and I did a lot of work that week with people. When most people were in the bar at night time, almost everybody would congregate in the bar after it. You'd be on to go for 4 or 5 in the morning, get up and straight into the Alpine River, and then we'd do like 2 hours of breath work in the dungeon in that big hotel with the drums going, and some of the stuff that was coming up through that, some of the traumas and the childhood stuff that was coming up. Obviously, that environment and how the effort of the week, just by being in the cold and the calorie demands, and then all the learning stuff and the science and the classroom, but it's full on. It's an intense week. It's and obviously it's going to, when you break people down like that, which I kind of felt they were doing. They were trying to kind of see who you were, I think. So most nights, in fact, every night I'll be working with people. I'll be doing energy work. I was loving my energy work at the time, like not angelic Reiki, but healing with intention. So you'll be doing energy work. Speaking to people, it was a lot of stuff where people were asking advice. A lot of childhood trauma was coming up that week. People were seeking my advice, and I just kept out the road. They were in the bar at night time, and I'll be in my room or working with somebody else in their room, and then that's how it kind of went that week for me. It was a great week. It was a really disappointing week on many fronts. Towards the end of it, even the very last night, where I'm waiting for Casper to do this science presentation, so everybody else is in the bar celebrating and high-fiving. The week's done and dusted, and I'm sitting in my room like, when's this fucking test? And I got a message to say that he couldn't make it, and he would just do it online when we get back. So I'd basically sat for the previous 4 nights like in my room and studying between working with people. with the intention to try and sit this exam that I was shit myself over, and he was basically messing me about, was how it felt. Whether it was or wasn't, I don't know, but that's what it felt like. So I left there, we left the week, and I was really disappointed. It was a bit of an anticlimax. They didn't tell us if we were instructors or not. We still had to do the science presentation when we got back, and they were still learning, so there was a lot of kind of stuff that they were picking up, and obviously the size of the academy at that time, and they were putting it together as they went. It kind of felt like they were learning as they went, which was fine. But when we came back, it was like just some people were finding out. It felt like the inner circle, the people that had spent time with Casper or were Casper's pals. Whether that wasn't the case, I don't know. But they'd found out they were already instructors, and then there was us. The kind of, there seemed to be two very distinct groups, and I was in Casper's group. He was keeping an eye. I think all the Scottish boys were in Casper's group. I think maybe no Scott McDonald, but it was almost like he was trying to see if we were good enough, especially with the science stuff. Certainly John Carstairs as well, and Mark Hume. We were, I wouldn't say the dunces of the class, but we were just the boys. That's the way I felt. I was just one of the boys that wanted to go and help people, But I'd learned this. We'd learned all the information. I knew that inside out and back to front. I knew I spent 7-8 months with mind maps, and I knew my shit when it come to the science stuff, all of it. And interesting enough, now looking back, young Thomas, who was like I can't remember what his degree was, to do with like sports science, but the time when they were teaching us this science during the day, Thomas would say to me like, this isn't right, some of this stuff isn't, it's not legit. And they were basically as if this is the best thing, since this is the second coming, this is going to heal everything. They even alluded to things like, I remember at the time, I was like, what is it? Is it the cure for cancer? What have they got? Because they'd always say there's new science coming. They had 2 bits of science at the time, and it was like, there's new science coming, like get prepared. And we're thinking, holy shit, once they release this, the cures are going to be on the block, so it was an interesting time. And we left there, and I got back, and I did the video presentation after about, I don't know how long it was, sent it away, which was a nightmare. I didn't do any of this stuff at the time. It was completely like a fish out of water, on my phone, a pre-recorded video, complete anticlimax. And I'm all the while I'm thinking, right, you know who I am. I'm already coaching people. I'm already putting people into groups in the water. I'm already getting my own centre for wellbeing. I'm already doing this. Like, what is the problem with just saying to me, you're a Wim Hof method instructor? And they came back and basically said that I was only able to do one-on-ones, which I couldn't believe. I absolutely, because some of the people that were ordained already and in their circle, I knew them personally, and I'm thinking, my experiences and what I'm doing with this, and it was just a wee bit of what I was doing. So to say that I couldn't do it, that was a challenge. That was a real kind of challenge. And I thought long and hard at the time of did I even want to be doing about it, purely because of how they were now treating us. It was very offhand. It was very much, we'll get to you whenever we feel like it. Any kind of grievances or stuff that needed to be resolved with anybody within the academy, the tribe, there wasn't much good stuff coming back for the office. It was always the same stuff with resistance and fighting, and people getting, taken off platforms, and especially like anything to do with your own work. So me having the vortex, they didn't like that, because it was all about the Wim Hof method, so all the other stuff that you did, and there was many instructors like that. You weren't allowed to mention the vortex, or it had to be all about the Wim Hof method, and they get their cut of everything that you did, and they would take £500 a year to basically re-certificate, to basically renew your certificate, so to go again every single year, plus a percentage of what you take. And I get it, it's a business. But greed was something right for the very off that you absolutely knew. I remember Wim saying he was a capitalist. And I could just see it, and some of the things he said that week, when you, especially in Poland, some of the things he would be talking about, and you're thinking, I could see, especially with the drink in him after dinner, and that's when I really started to, when you spend that amount of time with somebody and you see them in his house in Poland as well, and then when he's standing at the bar, and then when he's doing his walks up the mountain during the day, you're jumping into the water. Some of the stories were horrible in terms of the sexual content, how crude they were. I found that really, disturbing, and made me very uneasy right from the very beginning. Am I a prude? Maybe. Is it appropriate to talk about that? Maybe sometimes for some guys in certain bars at certain times. Maybe. I don't want to be anywhere near it. It's never anything that's floated my boat. So when he was talking like this, especially the vulgar stuff, I was really starting to chalk things off against him that I didn't like. And it was really a case of one particular evening, he was talking about something that happened when he was away. He was talking about monkeys, and I went back to the room and I spoke to my big mucker, who I'd been best friends with for 25 years, and I told him this story about basically monkeys. He was talking about monkeys masturbating. I'm smiling just now, but at the time when he said that, I was like, what did he just say? And I told my mucker on the phone, and right away he says, he's finished with me. that man's finished for me. There's no goodness in that. You don't need him, as the next part they said. You don't need him in your life, but he's finished with me. And that was in 2017. And I suppose when I came back from over in Poland, and then get into the next bit, my mum wasn't well. She was struggling in hospital. I had loads of different stresses in my life. They did send me the t-shirt. I did become an instructor. I then just the momentum started to grow, I suppose, because I was kind of caught in two worlds. One, these tools and techniques which were impacting my life so positively every single day, and the people I was sharing them with. I wanted to take this to, I wanted to help, but at the same time there was no support. I didn't feel part of it. I felt actually alienated from it. Again, I felt maybe like a threat to them, the ones that would actually let you near Wim, and I didn't want anything from Wim. I was quite happy doing my own thing. So that period when I came back, I was still practicing the method, I was still teaching the method, I was doing loads of free stuff, I was doing free events, I was teaching a class every Friday night at a gym down in Wishaw. And there's a suicide charity which is just along the road from it. Chrissy's house it is, down in Wishaw. And there was I got a message or a phone call one Sunday morning, and it was basically 3 laddies had suicided. The way I heard it was 3 laddies had suicided, and the way I was told it in the beginning was they went to my school, which is St Aidan's in Wishaw. And for whatever reason, and at different levels and different stages, this worked for me. When you tune into something like that, and I'm sitting in meditation, this message comes through. Why my phone was even on, I don't know. And I read it, and it broke me, and it got me in a way that I was hooked into it straight away. And I drove down to Chrissy's house that morning without ever really knowing what it was. I say I don't watch anything on the mainstream stuff or social media. I don't really know what's going on in the world. I haven't done for a long time. I just do my own thing. So went down and found out, chapped the door, explained who I was and how I would like to help any way that I can. And then I met the lady from Chrissy's house the next day, I think it was, or maybe even the same day. I ended up getting involved, with that charity for a really short period of time, and saw some miracles, saw some incredible things take place just by teaching people to breathe, which I knew how it worked. All the stuff, the suicide stuff and that low level, when it gets to that place of hopelessness, which is where I'd been, and then how you get back for that. Well, you know how to breathe and switch off your nervous system, but before you even get to cold water, you switch off that stress and get people out their head. No many people want to kill themselves, and that's before you even start to reconnect them back into how they're able to feel. So that was really, my intention was to basically, and I think as well with Wim's whole story with suicide, it was like, come on, let's fix this, let's do this. So I basically got back up the road, I sent Wim a message, and it was I've still got the messages, and it was like along the lines of, holy shit, the world's done in, like, here's what's happening. And he came straight back to me, what's going on? And I told him. And then he came straight back again, and he says, I'm coming over, I'm on my way, I'm coming over. And it was like a double take on a Sunday morning. What do you mean you're coming over? Why would you want to come over? Great, but this is Wim Hof, and I knew how big he was, and I'd been with him, and it was, I suppose it was like, holy shit, it was like he was back. It was like all the bullshit with becoming an instructor and the drama and the politics and the kind of never really kind of knowing where you stand with them. Him just saying, I'm coming over to help, all of that was done away with, and it was like, let's go, I'm in, let's do this, let's end suicide. And because of his story with suicide and his wife, it was like, so I drove straight down to Chrissy's house, and I spoke to Anne, the lassie that ran it, the lady that owns it and runs it and whatever. And I said, listen, do you know who Wim Hof is? And nobody knew who he was. I said, right, sit down, because here's how this goes. And I told him who he was, and I told him my experiences with him, and I told him that he was planning to come over. In fact, he was coming over. And the way that I saw it was, she had access to the schools in North Lanarkshire. We were going to go in. Wim was coming to the funeral, the laddie's funeral, who at this point I'd met the mum, and another member of the family, which even thinking back now, what people go through in those times, and the levels of like decimation I'd never seen before. When a mammy loses her son, it was an incredibly humbling experience for me, and many lessons and expansion, and the seriousness of this work. It was an incredible period. There's so many gains and benefits from a lot of people run about it. Many lessons for myself in so many ways. And right from the beginning, to know that Wim was coming over and we're going to this funeral together, and I told the mum that he was going to be there, and I told him what was going to happen when he came and how we're going to end this and how it was done and dusted, like suicide, and because I knew what it was like, I knew it'd bring them. So this was on a Sunday. Monday, he's coming over, the funeral's on the Friday, I do believe it was. And he basically, the last time I spoke to him was, he was on his way, he'd been meant to be going to a big corporate gig in Switzerland, and he cancelled it. So he was coming over on the boat with Erin and their newborn son, and I'm going to stay at my house, and we're basically going to go in, go to the funeral, and then take this to the schools and basically, offer a solution to this challenge that was just needed to be fixed. That's the way that it was left, and that was the last time I really spoke to him. That whole period, that whole week leading up to it, I'm thinking, and my wife was away at the time, she was away on holiday, and she was going to cancel her holiday. I was in the process of selling my home and renovating. This is our existing home, the Vortex, and upstairs. I was renovating this at the time, working manually, trying to prepare the big house to sell it next door, which was in the garden. Wim was coming over to stay at the house. All the stuff with Chrissy's house during the week with the funerals and the kind of my involvement in it, and then preparing for what was going to happen when he actually arrived. It's like people have no idea what this is going to be like. I know what happens, I know what he's like. Get ready, this is going to be a whirlwind, And then also me as well. At the time I'm like on the work that I was doing. He comes over and me and him do this together. He does it and I help him. Then it leaves. When he leaves, then I can then carry it forward. So it was great. Everybody was winning out it. And right up to the last minute, it wasn't to the night before it, and everything was done. I couldn't have prepared any more in so many ways. I gave everything I could that week. I nearly killed myself. I was no well with it. I hadn't slept, wasn't eating properly, just working constantly, like preparing for Wim Hof coming. And then I went to the funeral, still looking over my shoulder, because he said he was going to be there. I couldn't get anybody at the office leading up to it to see where he was and what the plans were. I sent him my details, my address and all that kind of stuff, and just assumed he would be there. And then at the end of it, when I realised that he wasn't coming, the world started to cave in on me. The walls caved in on me. I remember standing at that graveside in the last of Chrissy's house, walking straight across to me and basically said, literally, like, you've got your pals and I've got mine, and turned and her back on me and walked away. And I was like, holy fuck, like, trying my best, like, really, really trying to bring some goodness to this and try and help in some way, and just being, I was speechless. I was absolutely, like, obliterated. I couldn't believe that he hadn't came at the funeral. I knew there had to be some reason that he hadn't come. And then I got back up the road, and I'm sitting outside my daughter's school. She had been picked up that day, so I went up to pick her up from school, found her, and I sat there for about half an hour. And I was broken. I couldn't stop crying. I couldn't believe that he hadn't been there. And I was angry. I was absolutely angry. If I'd got a hold of him, oh my God, I was so disappointed and so hurt. And I really felt as if I'd let all them down, the people down. That was the hardest part. I put so much into it. And then he wasn't there. And I phoned the office up, which I think I spoke to Bart Pronk, one of Wim's kind of right-hand men, and basically said, look, he needs to speak to me. I need to speak to him and see what the story is. And he sent me a message, basically, I've got the messages, we'll raise money for the families. And I'm like, who's ever mentioned money? What's money got to do with this? This has got nothing to do with money. Like, where are you? And that was it, basically, blah, blah, blah. And he never, ever, from that point forward, everything had changed, obviously. I was out of the charity, I had let them down. I was so hurt. Oh my God. And I suppose even at the time, I knew it. I decided there and then that I couldn't rely on him. And in fact, I couldn't rely on anybody. That was the big lesson. Even as I was going through, I'm like, why again do you need somebody to stand beside? What can he do that you can't do? That's what was coming through at the time. Because I was seeing what I was doing with these breathing sessions, and him coming as well. As I said to him on the phone, this can't be the Wim Hof show. You can't come in here with a Breathe Motherfucker t-shirt and shouting and bawling, and these people tell you, fuck off, that's is serious stuff. And he said on the phone, like, I know what to do. So that was really the start of the end, I suppose. What he did to me and how he let me down. And I was still really torn because I loved what it was doing to people. I loved how it was helping people. It was still in my conversations almost every single day, sitting in the saunas at New Lanark Gym or the classes I was taking, I was still teaching it. But my heart just went out it. It did. I've just been so disappointed with him. And I suppose the whole backing of the tribe and Inner Fire and together, all that kind of stuff together as one. And it was like, talk is so fucking cheap. Like, where were you? You should have been there. And at least spoke to me and let me know if you're not coming. So that's where it was. And from there, there really only ever was going to be, one end. It was me basically leaving it because I couldn't really stand beside him anymore. I'd been so disappointed and so let down by him. And also in the community, talk about losing faith, Jesus Christ, between the gym and Chrissy's house and the local community, all that kind of stuff. It was really, it was just sad. It was horrible, and it was completely avoidable with one phone call. And I suppose there's that taking responsibility as well after it. Like what actually happened, and then we can do something about it. I was still wanting to play. I was still wanting to help, and I decided to stay with him. I can't believe I stayed with him, but I decided to stay and continue to teach the method. And I wanted to go back and see him. There was an instructors reunion every year where they take their £500 and you go back over, which was going to be the next spring. This was in the summertime, so this was going to be next spring, and I was willing to wait. And I just kept my head down, and I was basically teaching the Wim Hof method. The centre was open, the Vortex. I was doing workshops. I never did one single Wim Hof method workshop in terms of through the platform and under fire, and people pay them, and then they come and evaluate you. I was like, nah, my heart was out at that point. I wasn't doing it. I didn't want to do it, and really wanted to go back and see him in person, and I suppose ask him what happened, here, man to man, what was the story, why did you do what you did? And I waited, and I went back over, and this time it was very different. The instructors reunion, and he was coming back from Iceland. He'd been on a mini tour in Iceland for a couple of days, so he got there, I think, the Sunday. It was like 3 days the seminar was on. Met some amazing people I'd watched online, and different instructors that inspired me, a couple of beautiful souls. And some of the people in that group are still some of my closest friends. There's some incredible people attracted to that method back then. I don't know what it's like now. I've not watched it for a long time, but then some of the people in it, like real people that were using it to heal themselves and then passing on what they'd learned, it was incredible. And went over, and he burst through the door on the Sunday, late morning, just back from Iceland. And he's got a great recall for things, so he remembers everybody's name. So he walks through the door. The first thing he did was crack open a can of beer. And I was like, holy fuck, here we go again. And then it was, hey, James, Mark, naming everybody, and everybody's like preparing to kiss the arse. Was how it went. And they would warn you before they came in, like, give him some space. Like, and one would come in just like a force of nature. It really was like a real, almost like a runaway train. Really powerful. But the bevy again. So I watched him that day, and I thought, I'm done. I've got nothing to say. Every time he spoke was the dancing bear. There was he knew and I knew. There was a conversation to be had. And even Bart Pronk, we were in the water together down at we went in for a wee bit of, it was even cold exposure, but into one of the wee local kind of sand pits, whatever it was, wee kind of lake thing. And he said, we had a bit of a thing last year online. And I says, aye, but it's all resolved. Don't worry about it. It's all done and dusted. Nothing against him. It was Wim my challenge was with, and how, because he's the man. He's inner fire. He's the business. He's the Wim Hof method. I'm there because of him. And I'm representing him and his methods. So it's him I want to speak to. He's the man that basically, at the time I thought, was calling the shots. So it was time to go. It was absolutely time to go. And I suppose at that time as well, when your heart goes out I'd been doing it in a different way. I had been listening to the Wim Hof method breathing online for a long time. I couldn't listen to his voice anymore. I stopped watching him online. A lot of the stuff, most of the stuff he was doing was starting to repulse me. How he behaved, how he conducted himself. I could just, it turned on me. I'd turned on him. My stomach turned every time I saw him. That's just the way that it was. And it was really a matter of time, I suppose, before I left him. And at the same time, I was starting to look at different ways of breathing, I suppose. Like, what are they teaching us? What is the stuff? Because there was so many lies, and there was so many different instructors that were questioning things, getting treated poorly, and which is a common way. Anybody that's been run about under fire or women, that's the norm. Unless you're part of the team, part of the gang. Most people don't get, and there's so many have left. I believe I was one of the first to leave. I was lying in the bath one morning, and I had something he did online, and I thought, I'm done with you. And it was fully respect and thanks, because there was nothing in vain. I'd learned loads, I'd expanded and become more. It helped me, I'd helped so many people by this point. But it was incompatible. I couldn't stand beside him and didn't want to be associated with him or affiliated with him anymore. So it was absolutely time to go in my own way. And it was a great lesson. I learned so much from it. So many people benefited in so many ways. I benefited in so many ways. And it led me on to, when you see when something doesn't work, then it's right, okay, we can learn for that. How does it work? What's the correct way for it to work properly? And back to the breath, one of my teachers, we always spoke about the breath and how it's the one thing that we all do, and everybody should know how to do it properly and functionally. And really by this point, I'm looking at the Wim Hof method, no picking holes in it, but going, what does that actually do? And Wim's a wild man, 27 world records. I mean, he walks into a room, the whole place lights up. And so what is he doing? And he's basically like an adrenaline junkie. He's basically dumping in massive amounts of stress all the time. He's basically on this like fueled, never-ending, certainly the version that I saw anytime I saw him. And you need to be like that to do what he did. You know, I mean, when you feel his life force when he comes on about you, he's a powerful being, and he's generating that by how he behaves and moves and his practices and his breathing and his yoga and the Cauld. That's what keeps him in those elevated states. You know, so massive stress, and I'm thinking, maybe it wasn't suiting me at the time. I wasn't enjoying it. I wasn't doing it. I was starting to look at different ways of doing it, whether it was like the yogic breath and probably more quiet, like functional breathing. Absolutely, first time I heard that was Patrick McFadyen talking about how we're supposed to breathe, which I'd heard Patrick years and years before. Patrick is the man from the Oxygen Advantage and the Buteyko clinic as well. He's one of the custodians of custodians, is that the right word? He basically carried forward Dr. Buteyko's work, and he teaches the Buteyko method. There's different organisations within the Buteyko method. He's got one of them. I can never remember what it's called, apologies Patrick, but the Oxygen Advantage is his, and that's basically the Buteyko method, which is functional breathing, scientifically proven how we're supposed to breathe, and then Patrick brings in the simulation of altitude training, so changing your chemistry, messing about with different, how you breathe, breath holds, messing up the chemistry for your positive gain, bringing in good stresses and adversity and do different things to basically let the body respond and become, stronger, more adaptive, massive benefits to different systems within the body. So functional breathing was something that just came at the right time for me. And after a knee operation, again, coincidences and how things go together, sitting out my nut on morphine or whatever they gave me for that knee operation and deciding to take my mouth that night. I don't know why. I decided to take my mouth that night and stayed up the whole night. I had a real feeling of the presence of my mum that night, which was incredible. I've talked about it a lot in the kind of live stuff that I do, but I could really feel she was like saying to me, go and learn this system, this will really help you, this is what you need just now. And I couldn't wait to get up the next morning. Knee 8 times the size of what it should be, ice in my knee all night. I wouldn't take painkillers at all for the hospital. When I left, which caused some huge challenges, they basically said to me, you're probably going to die tonight. There's a chance you're going to blood clot and you'll die if you don't take these aspirin and these. And I'm like, I've just breathed the whole night, I'm not taking any pills. I refused to take the painkillers. So I was icing my knee the whole night and I had this feeling of, what is this with the Oxygen Advantage? So the next morning I looked it up and the course started like 3 days later. So I basically enrolled in the course, started taking my mouth up, learned how to breathe functionally, and I spent 7 weeks. I couldn't walk for 7 weeks properly. So I spent 7 weeks with Patrick McFadyen and his advanced, just vast catalogue of videos and scientific information. And the Wim Hof method, you start to see very, very quickly, when you sit with Patrick, and because I was trained by Wim Hof, I was allowed to go right in at the Oxygen Advantage. It's the advanced instructors, I think they call it, so it's their top kind of tier, and you better know what you're on about, because it's scientific, it's a scientific class you're sitting in. You walk in the Zoom call and you're straight into abbreviations, and Patrick is just what a teacher, what a force for good, and a being of light. I see him as, in terms of spreading solutions and things that make this world better. Functional breathing, everybody needs. Patrick McFadyen is the world authority as far as I can see. He's a bridge, especially for laymen like me who can basically, when he talks, you understand. And I spent 7 weeks learning the science and learning all the kind of graphs and how it goes together and what goes on within the body and the different systems and the immune systems. And the more that I learned, and this was like proper, this was like real school, and this was like university, and I had time to do it because I couldn't walk. And then you start to see the holes in the Wim Hof method, and you start to learn that the Wim Hof method is dysfunctional breathing, it's generating stress. And then I suppose when COVID came, and watching since COVID, what's that been, 5 years since I've been a Oxygen Advantage instructor, trained in the Buteyko method as well. Although I didn't set my certification in the Buteyko, I don't teach the Buteyko method and I don't teach the Oxygen Advantage. I pass them on every single day. I teach the tools and techniques from within it. But in terms of the whole Oxygen Advantage system, I have taught it in the past. I don't really push for it. It's more for athletes and people that are serious about training, how the lactate can be affected and the chemistry of the blood and simulation of altitude training. There's loads of things you can do to improve your performance, but that's not really what I'm looking at. It's mostly mental health and I suppose intentional living, and that doesn't really fit in. The Buteyko method is the same. I did the training, I did case studies and stuff, but it wasn't really what I wanted to do. I'm still going to get that qualification. I'm going to go and study it again, and I'd like to do it with Patrick over his place in Ireland. I'd like to meet the man and thank him and offer my help and my services to anything that he's doing, because he's a force for good. Dead simple. And what I learned from him, about functional breathing as opposed to dysfunctional breathing and how we're supposed to breathe, and then all of a sudden you understand everything. And now I'm as trained as anybody with breath work. I understand it. I don't teach it scientifically. I don't believe it's really required. It confuses people. I think it's important to know how it goes together and to really, the intention behind it and how you use it, the ability to switch on your nervous system, how to turn it off, how that feeds absolutely into cold exposure. is a huge part of it, you know. So functional breathing and cold exposure and the whole cold movement, I've obviously got challenges with a lot of that. I absolutely have. The way people do it, again, you know, and know that I'm here to stop anybody. But you know, when you see people that basically, when they go out and you watch what they're doing, a lot of them don't know what they're doing. I see a lot of groups and the amount of stress, and this is where the Wim Hof method changed for me. One, because of what happened with Wim, obviously that's going to affect my feelings towards him and his method, even though it's massively beneficial to so many people. Millions and millions of people have benefited from that technique around the world, there's no question about it. Since COVID and the vaccinations, and also the way that they teach it, I don't believe it's now relevant. It's certainly not as relevant as it was when I came across it 2016-17 and what it did for me. I think now, since the virus and, you know, obviously the constriction that's taken place within the physical bodies, no matter what your belief system is, whatever's causing that, the Wim Hof method breathing, dysfunctional when you're massively changing, and you are massively changing the chemistry within your body. When you're blowing off all that carbon dioxide, you take it in and you're blowing it out, and you're doing 3-4 rounds of that. And they may have changed it now. I know Wim's changed these tactics a wee bit because he's getting caught out a bit. People are starting to, well, they were getting onto him. But the constriction that takes place when that CO2 is all being blown off, CO2, without getting into it too much, but when you take a breath in and then you breathe out and hold your breath, the desire to breathe is the body's sensitivity to CO2 building up. So it's not the lack of oxygen in your system. There's oxygen in your system. You stick a wee pulse oximeter on your finger, it'll take the arterial blood flow, you know, so you can basically see, you know, what the saturation of oxygen in your arterial blood. That's how it works together. So the oxygen's in there. It's how you get it out the system so you can actually use it. So the sensitivity to CO2 building up. And with the Wim Hof method, what you're doing is you're blowing off all the CO2. So that's why when they do the retentions, which is a breath hold or an apnea, when you hold your breath, if you've got almost next to no CO2, it takes a long time for the CO2 to build up within the body. And that's what signals to the brain that it's time to breathe. That's how it works. That's why you get all these really long breath holds with the Wim Hof method. I can remember people on my Friday night classes, 10 minutes. And I'm thinking, oh my God, thank you God, how I never killed anybody. The pressure I would put people through, the stress, I was literally trying to blow their brains out, like trying to DMT and colours, but the pure intention of bringing stuff up. I've always used this, not just to take people through the breathing and to give them experience, but to use it a way for releasing stuff. Soldiers with PTSD, like heavy traumas, a lot of the kind of the heavy stuff, like the sexual stuff and the childhood stuff, and that stuff needs to come out, and some of it's buried really, really deeply, obviously, you know. So this method of going in, when people are up for it and you explain how it goes together, but don't worry about it, because once we get up then we're going to replace it, which is what it's always been about for me. That at the time, you know, was the way that I was doing it, I suppose, because I didn't know any different. This before I knew anything about Patrick McFadyen or the oxygen advantage of breathing properly, or my own experiences with cold exposure. I was just learning, and anything they said was literal. That was fact. That was law. That's the way they set it up. And I suppose the watching after COVID and seeing the constriction that was taking place, people are having challenges with brain and hearts and lung stuff. That's the way they are. What your belief system is doesn't matter. That's just the facts of how it is. So when you add in this extra stress and the damage that it does, and I learned a lot as well. My mum passed in terms of the Wim Hof method and breathing and how the oxygen saturation, and you know, and watching at the time with COVID, people getting put onto ventilators and how it was killing people. I understand all of that now. I didn't at the time when I was watching it. COVID killed my mum. COVID basically whited out her lungs, and basically, it was. Inside one night, she went from being all right, and she had a weak chest, but basically whited out. It was, the doctors were basically literally said, we've never seen anything like it. So that was right at the start of COVID 2020 when she passed, February, before it was actually a thing in terms of being public. So I watched what it did to my mum firsthand, as well as the whole circus of the National Health Service and all that kind of stuff, and the medications and the doctors and all that kind of stuff. I've spoken about that before, and I will do again, no doubt. But COVID, the virus itself, was what killed my mum. You know, so functional breathing, how you're supposed to breathe in clinical situations, the stuff that I'd learned, and then watching Wim and the constriction that takes place, all of a sudden you get to go, you know what, that's wrong. That's not how you're meant to do it. That's the wrong way to breathe, especially for what we're facing just now. And for me, it was great for alpha males and like big muscly, like blow your brains out guys. But always at the time, I remember thinking, where's all the women? And what about the Waynes? You know, and now, you know, what I now know about breathwork, someone who suffers from anxiety or panic attacks, which is really common, especially since the vaccine, and especially since COVID, people are getting multiple panic attacks. I've had people on here getting 20, 30 panic attacks every single day. And one lassie in particular went to the doctor, and doctor says to her, we think it's a virus in your brain, just get on with it. And she's having to go to work every day as a primary school teacher and having 20 to 30 panic attacks every day. And, when Patrick McKeown says that this stops panic attacks, this is an emergency exercise. One of the exercises, there's 2 or 3 actually, but one of the exercises in particular, when you change the chemistry very, very quickly, as you do, you learn how to do and how the body goes and how it works and how the breath goes together. That girl came in one session. I was literally talking to her, explaining what we're going to do, and she had a panic attack sitting there and then. And anybody who's had a panic attack, there's different variations of them. You wouldn't wish me your worst enemy. I've had a couple in my life, and they're life-changing. But since then, I don't believe she's had another panic attack, because she knows how her chemistry works in her body now. So when it goes together properly, when you can see, for me, the power of the breath is so significant. I love, that's why I call it the intentional breath. Functional breathing, I teach absolutely how to breathe, how you're meant to breathe, how to upregulate the nervous system, how to downregulate it, how to use it for cold exposure. Absolutely. Really important, obviously, this topic as well, how you use it with the cold. And I suppose one of the biggest challenges I face is knowing what I know with my own experience of my own practices. I must have had over 10,000 people in the cold now. At the centre, free events, the Big Breathing Believes, different charities that I've done, corporate events. There must be over 10,000 people easily. So you get to see what works and what doesn't work. And I've been watching people come in here over the years. And this is something that I also do not like. When somebody comes and they come to 1 or 2 classes, and then all of a sudden they become a cold water expert. That's happened a lot over the time. And it's something I've got a huge challenge with, purely because I'm not qualified. They don't know what they're doing. And even worse, I suppose, sometimes when I see them, I've watched and I'll see their clips and I'll watch them, like what they do in teaching their practice, which is basically my practice. A lot of this stuff is original to me. When I see them, like, this is how I do it before I stand over that barrel, this is what I say to myself, or how they then take that away and basically take it into their business and use it, the stuff that I've shown them. And this could be one class, and then all of a sudden they become cold water experts with no qualification. And that's fair enough. Everybody's got to find their own way. There's so many groups now, and everybody getting into the cold water is a great thing. My challenge, as always, is, like, what's your reasons, what's your why, what's the intention behind it, like, what are you selling, what are you doing with it? And if you're not teaching proper breathwork with it in terms of how to do it, how to get into the cold properly, then you're missing a huge trick. And you can't just chop people in the cold. You can't just say to people, like, come and get in the cold and we'll see how it goes. There's so many things got into it. And that's why I've got challenges with certain things that are online. I keep hearing about the polar bear group. I had a wee go at them last year. The lad who runs it sent me a message right at the beginning when he started, and I saw it right. And I looked at it right away, and I'm thinking, that isn't for me. The polar bears are not for me. The way they're doing that, and this is before they were doing their resets and their power dunks or whatever it is. And I saw it, and I'm thinking, that's a circus to me. That's a lot of ego. I know a lot of it's to do with addiction and recovery, and that just looks like another addiction to me. And again, what's your reason, what's your why, what's your intention? I know a lot of people are benefiting from it, but from me, what I know about the breath work and then the stress that it puts under you. So is it 100 dunks or 100 resets at the day? And I watched the guy who runs it in minus 50 conditions, jumping out and into this tub, and I'm going, what are you doing? What is the... And then, I get people here who come here that have been to it, and it's the same thing all the time. It seems 10 minutes in the ice, which if you're healthy and you're vital and you know how to breathe properly and how to generate heat within your body. But if you're just walking into that place and they're chucking you for 10 minutes in the ice, I watched it. Wim had an advanced course. I don't know what it's called. There was a lad from local to here who I coached every day for about 18 months. He appeared at the river one day. I coached him every single day. He became a Wim Hof method instructor. And part of the training, or part of this new focus group, was him getting into ice for 20 minutes. And this guy was ex-army, ex-military, hard as nails, couldn't mark him with a stick. And in the middle of summer, this is about 3 years ago, he came up here and we ran an ice bath and we put him in ice, which I was completely against. We stuck him in ice for 20 minutes. And it was a baking hot summer morning it was. By the time he got out, the sun was up, it was glorious. And they nicky him for the next hour, trying to get his body heat back up to basically to temperature. His life is literally on the line. And this is somebody who, he trained with me, he trained through the Wim Hof Method Academy, he was on his way to become an instructor. That was 20 minutes. And then I watched these groups like the polar bears, where they're basically like sitting in this ice up to their neck. and basically like screaming, the force of screaming and staying in there to make people get this. And that's before they even start doing the resets or the dunks, whatever they call them. And at that point, I'm going, right, what's the intention with this? What's the plan with this? What's the benefits to that? What are you getting for that? And the physiology of the body, what does the body need? And it's no one brush stroke for everybody. And cold exposure is great for a lot of people, but a lot of people, it's probably not for them, just because of the amount of stress. If you think you're like dunking up and down 100 times, oh my God. And then the breath with that as well. If you don't have your shit together with the breath, this is the challenge that Wim's facing just now, apparently. Mr. Kearney, Scott Kearney, who I do not endorse. I can't stand him, if I'm honest with you. This a Canadian, I think he is. But he's talking about the lawsuits for the Wim Hof method, how Wim is basically teaching hyperventilation. And then as you breathe out, we know carbon dioxide in your system is certainly very low. You then put your face in the water. And the carbon dioxide, what happens is if that signals to, if it's so low, and the brain, it gets to a point where, you know, it'll signal to, it's time to basically breathe, and it'll basically switch you off, makes you unconscious. And the first thing you do when you switch off is breathe in, because the brain is demanding oxygen. It's an unconscious response. Incredible, you know. But if your face is in the water and you basically black out, the first thing you do is you take a breath in, your lungs fill with water, and you're dead. Unless there's somebody there who knows what they're doing, you're going to be struggling. And there's many people. Scott Kearney talks about over 20 people now worldwide who have been caught out by this. A lot of them have got like the evidence, the smartwatches, and they can see their heart rates, and you know the information that's on them. So apparently there's all sorts of legal stuff going on in America just now. They're trying to kick Wim out of America, and I'm watching it and I'm going, right, okay, how's he going to respond to this? How's he going to react? And then the way I can see it, number one, him and Scott Kearney are now trying to kill each other. And he's been talking about how Wim's son owns the academy, which we heard about years ago, and how all the inner fighting comes through, and they're basically trying to, I suppose, put a post in the brain and keep it away from Wim, and all this. You can see all this kind of stuff going on at the same time, you know, passing it on to Wim's daughter. She's becoming more the face of the Wim Hof method, which is interesting. Very difficult to give that amount of power for something he's created to anybody. It's absolutely, and obviously going to lose some of its magic, some of its power, when it's somebody else that's doing it. It's him. He's Wim Hof. He's the Wim Hof method. That doesn't even a family member. You know, and watching Scott Kearney talking about these lawsuits and what they're doing to Wim, and how and Wim basically taking zero responsibility. That's what he's saying. He's taking nothing to do with it. They're basically trying to say that, you know, whoever's teaching the Wim Hof method in America has got nothing to do with Wim. So all the instructors that have been teaching it, and at the end of the day, I owe that, but people are dying. You know, so again, we go to the end of the very end and go, right, how's it going? You know, how is this going? Are people benefiting from it? Or are they not? At that point, there's decisions to be made, you know. So having the awareness to see how it goes together properly, not just because Bobby tells you this is what happens. And within the polar bears, I send my love. I think what yous are doing is great. I really do. But it's just no for me, and it's not the way that I would do it because of what I know. And it's the environment, I get all that, and the people that it attracts, and everybody's different, I get all that. But in terms of what the physiology of the body needs, and like that extreme cold exposure. One of the lasses that was coming here, I saw the video at the very beginning, it was like extremely extreme cold exposure. I'm thinking, how bad does it need to be? Like, do we need to like lose somebody? Do we need to kill somebody? Just how bad can we make it? You know, and that's the ego. You know, that's why I never time it. I'm not interested in timing it. You must experience. Once the stress response kicks in and the good hormones are in your system, then great, it's time to get out. Anything more than that, it's normally ego. So timing it, you must experience, you know, go in, how to breathe when you're in, very important, you know, not really before you get in, but once you're actually in. And I suppose if you're going to learn it, like, then go and find somebody that knows what they're doing. Another person who's the old, what's her name, Natalie, the breathing room, she came here a couple of times, and then great, go and do your thing. She's a yogi, and you can see online, I can see online where people are and what they're getting from it, and this, we are the world, and let's say people, okay, I get it, brilliant. So she actually asked me to coach her and teach her, and I said yes, and then very quickly I said no, because I could watch how she was doing it, what she was getting from it. Again, no, it's this stuff, and it's very important. And then recently I've had a couple of people that have been approached by her to come and do the Soulful Sunday things, and part of it is putting people into cold water, and two of the girls basically that she was actually trying to recruit, one in particular was basically saying, like, from her, it doesn't matter if you've no cold exposure, just put them in. So do the yoga, and then it's up to them whether they do the cold. But you're basically selling a cold exposure, you know, and that's nationwide just now. Apparently, that's everywhere. They're putting these out, these Soulful Sundays, and everybody must take responsibility. But when somebody's making money for it,
again, what's the intention behind the person that's putting it out? And again, somebody who just comes and takes everything and takes it for their own, and there's many people like that. There's loads of different coaches who basically they came and I gave and I helped, and then they take it away, and this isn't sour grapes, because the thing that I get for that, there's so many people benefiting. I was doing a place in Motherwell, and this lady was talking about how this lassie, Natalie, has helped her with cold exposure. And I'm thinking, that's because she came here and I gave her it. Not that anybody knows that, but that happens loads and loads of times. The other wee lassie, wee Demi, who basically, I just stand over it and I just think, what's my reason, what's my why? She's got an academy where loads of kids are learning and they're watching her. So it's good to see the stuff that I've taught. For me, but again, with all this stuff, this is why I give credit to all my teachers. Because when they take it as their own, and they've been at it 20 minutes, even if I've been doing it for 2 years, if they then take the stuff that I've taught them as theirs, then people don't ever get access to me and my teachers, and the stuff that I've learned. So then it becomes, it stops. It's like a roadblock, and that's where a lot of these people that come, I just basically do away with them. I take them out of my life straight away. And I think as a lot of the people that are doing about this long term, a lot of my students long term within the programme and Boys Club, there's so many different bits to this, and the people that used to stand beside me and were basically learning from me, the wee guy, if you could look, wee Darren as well, who became a Wim Hof method instructor, I think when they take it for themselves and they put the blockades up and they're trying to be the man themselves, then they lose all the other stuff, and the people that are going to them and think it's them as being the man, then they're losing access to the stuff that I've picked over the years. That's the challenge I've got with it. That's I suppose my only gripe. But in terms of them putting it out there, no matter what the group is, putting people into the cold, and there's goodness in it, but I think when you're missing the power of the breath and how you're supposed to breathe and the ability to control your different systems, if you're just jumping in and power breathing and doing all these resets and like out your nut, then you're missing a lot of it, and that's not what everybody needs, and there's a huge amount of ego in all of that, there really is, no matter how you dress it up. Again, what's your reason, what's your why are you doing it? That's the important thing. For me, it's a tool for health and well-being. Mental health, physical pain, everything gets better. What it does for me personally, it's part of an entire programme that I teach. It's optional. You don't need to do it. A lot of people don't need it, and a lot of people it's too hard for them. A lot of people shouldn't do it as well because it's too difficult physically on them. So it's not just a case of and you come, right, get in there, you pussy. That's madness. That's absolute madness. It's no mandatory. And that's where a lot of these people, because it worked for them and their mental, look, everybody, it doesn't work like that. And you're going to hurt people. People are going to lose out of it, which obviously is unacceptable. So that's my take on the cold. That's a bit of my story about the old Wim Hof method and me and Wim and my journey with the cold. So many good things in it. Nothing ever in vain. I have learned so much off the back of that. When I left Wim, and I suppose the final straw with the lessons in it was basically the Heal Scotland situation with them and the realisation they were going to teach the Wim Hof method in my event, which is Breathe and Believe is my event, and they want to bring in these new Wim Hof method instructors to basically run events for them that I'd been doing over the years, all the free stuff I was doing for them, and allow them to call it Breathe and Believe and teach the Wim Hof method. And then Lilia shouting and bawling about how amazing Wim was and all this kind of stuff, and I'm going, you don't really know who he is, and all the stories that I know in terms of my experience with him and his intention with this work and the detrimental effects of this work now in terms of, as I say, people are losing their lives and the amount of stress that it's causing. Do we really need more stress just now? At that time, that was really the end of, I suppose for me, needing to stand beside anybody, and Wim was a huge partner. The way he let me down and the way that he literally fucking broke my heart, then it was a blessing, because now I realise I don't need anybody, and you can't gate to anybody. You've just got to talk and share about your own experiences and what it does for you, and that's going to attract certain people. I believe all the groups, all of the different people that are doing this work, it attracts exactly, always. It's never rang the people that it brings towards you, and as a part of this centre and a part of my work, cold exposure is a big part of it. It's not for everybody, but it's a huge part of the programme. It's a huge part of the daily practices. Don't need it every single day, but if you know how to use it and you know how it goes together and is there as a tool, the benefits from it are incredible. So I'm a huge advocate of cold exposure. If you're able to do it safely and your body's capable and it calls you, then learn to do it properly. Learn how to breathe properly. Learn how to breathe before you get into it. Not as important as when you're in it, and how the strength response, what it feels like and what to expect. and that should be like coherent and calm and present, because your life is literally on the line. So if you're jumping about like a nutcase, ducking your head under the water, you know, it's one way of doing it. It's not the way that I would do it. You know, so with all the love in my heart to all of you out there that are teaching this stuff, take responsibility and, you know, keep it humble. You know, it's a wee bit of the solution. It's not the whole solution. The intentional living is far more interesting. I don't even really push the cold exposure, if I'm honest. It's all the other stuff. The programme for me is like, if you're not doing cold exposure anyway, like you don't really qualify to be doing the rest of the stuff. That's just a wee bit of it. You know, it's the intentional living, and it's how you sleep and how you eat and where you're spending your time, and your meditation practice, obviously, and your breathwork practices, and, you know, like the intentional journey. That's what it's more about for me. This intentional living, you know, as opposed to, it's all about cold exposure and this is the way we do it. That's a wee bit it's a wee bit more complicated than that. So there you go, that's my take on the cold. Excited very much to share my take on the cold and the breathwork and the programme as we move forward to this week. This is going to be released on Friday, and by the weekend we're going to be announcing the Scottish tour, which is great. So again, the Breathe and Believe, that workshop that they started off with the Wim Hof method, again, more good coming through it. Without the Wim Hof method, I wouldn't have been teaching that. But what it evolved into with the meditation and the experiences and the healings and the realizations, the relief that people are getting from that Breathe and Believe workshop, the smiles and the joy and the tears and the expansion, it's all good stuff. And that came, you know, through me and my journey with cold exposure and meeting Wim and all the other stuff that came and how it all came together with everything else that I learned, you know. So fantastic. And that's going to be, we're looking at June time for the Scottish tour. And that's going to be really exciting, just to see where we are, you know, and to see who we can help and take functional breathing and meditation and relaxation and, you know, a different way of living, the way, as I call it, or as they call it, the way of living, the way it's supposed to be. The plan is to take it to the country to start off with, is this continual mission of the Vortex and my work and the team. It never stops. It's every single day, you know, and the Godcast is absolutely part of that. I'm starting to really find my way with it now. My intention is to share what I've done, you know, to share what I've picked up along the way. It never ends. It's always expanding. I'm always just documenting where I'm coming from. I'm hoping that you're now seeing when I'm explaining why I've got challenges with certain people and why I block certain people, and there's really specific reasons behind it. I'm not just chucking the toys out the pram and going, you know, you came here and stole my stuff. I see way more than that. I can see the different levels to it and who benefits, and I don't need that, and I don't want that, you know. But at the same time, you know, it's like once bitten, you know, you cross the line once, then it's like I can see who you are, and then you're into the intention and all that kind of stuff. So as always, what's the intention? An intention with me and this Godcast and this work is to help people, is to take it to the world and bring in some light, you know. So as it's darkness to light again, this may well ruffle a few feathers, especially the Wim Hof method instructors. They love a good fight. I'm not here to fight. I'm just talking about my experience with it, you know, and anybody that's got anything else to say about it. Most of the instructors never even met Wim. They get the dancing bear version. They don't know who he is, you know, and I've seen who he is, and I didn't like it, you know. So I send them all the best. I wish them all the best. Good luck with whatever they're doing. It doesn't affect me in any way anymore, which is great. I can now talk about it and be okay with it and see the lessons and send them all the best, but do my own thing, because I believe there's a better way of doing it. To sit in cold exposure, funnily enough, the Wim Hof method, I don't believe is the way to do it. It's just as simple as that. And stressful breathing and generating mass, that's one way to do it, but repeatable and pulling you back and the benefits of it and how the body will respond, that's not the way to do it, you know. So the way is the way. God bless you all. Thanks for your time. Sending love and light as always. We keep moving forward. And goodbye for now.